your approach on Bach's music in general. You are quite expressive with your sound, your touch, your phrasing.
Well, in terms of my touch, I feel that I certainly learned a lot from Maria Curcio about touch. So she spent a lot of time working with me on the idea of pulling the sound out of the piano as opposed to pushing the sound into the piano. And I think that that's how I approach everything that I play, is that it's almost like you're drawing out the sound and there's no sense of attack. It's all about having a kind of centered sound that is singing no matter what dynamic you're playing in or even what articulation you're using, that the sound has more of a sound of strings or of the voice. And in terms of Bach, I really love his choral music, the cantatas, and of course the B minor Mass and the Passions, and also I love all of his solo violin, solo cello, all of these basically non-keyboard works I think are really incredibly inspiring to listen to. And we're playing on an instrument that he never heard. He heard a very rudimentary piano right at the beginning of the existence of the piano. And this Steinway or whatever we play on now is not like something that he would have heard. So I don't think it has so much, it doesn't relate as much to a harpsichord to me as it does to other instruments. And when I'm playing Bach, I really think a lot about, if I was to sing this music, where would I breathe? How would my breath affect the direction of a phrase? And, certainly when you listen to singers, they tend to be a lot more free than instrumentalists because they're working with text as well. And so they want to highlight certain words and, stretch out certain syllables, certain kinds of consonants or vowels. And I think that instrumental music is saying something also very particular. And so I like to have the feeling that the music is speaking. And certainly with Bach, of course, there are multiple voices that are all speaking to each other, and they all have different characters. So I guess that's how I'm not really thinking of Bach as a keyboard player.
And you played Bach pieces always with this kind of architectural design. I can hear there's a climax and there's build up and there's a whole structure. Would you share a little bit about that?
Yes, I think that the thing that's very interesting about Bach is that there's an incredible amount of detail. So there's so much that you can notice measure by measure, but all of it is within the idea of a much larger whole. And I think that he was always keeping those two things in mind in his compositions. So definitely there isn't one way to interpret what that architecture is or how to show an architecture. And that's what's so exciting about being an artist, is that what I see might not be what you see, and that's why we want to hear many different people play the same piece of music, because everyone is going to have their own particular insight. It's like if you go, I think that Maria used to use the example. Schnabel apparently used to talk about the musician being like a mountain guide, and that the mountain guide would take you up the path and point out different beautiful things, interesting things that in nature that they saw, and they take you up and show you the view, the particular view that they liked, but they didn't create the view. And so, you know, when you're playing Bach, Bach created the view, but my route to that view might be different, and I might like to see the view at sunset and somebody else likes to see the view at sunrise. And so I think that when I'm working on a piece of music by Bach, I want to understand all of the details. I want to see all of the flowers, but I also want to see the whole view. And that's hard to be able to balance those two things. It takes a lot of trying things one way and then trying things another way.
How do you go about those details? Right? Because some people say, oh, you have to really understand Baroque music in order to play Bach right.
I'm not so interested in performance practice, so I don't really spend a lot of time researching about you know, Baroque ornamentation, or I don't do a lot of you know, stylistically appropriate improvisation. Some people do that, and that can be brilliant, but I don't do that. I guess I'm not as interested in style. I'm more interested in clarity. I want to hear. I want to hear what's in the score. I don't want to hear. I guess what I say to my students is that I don't want to hear them. I don't want to be aware of them. I want to be aware of the music. And so there's a kind of honest approach that you can take to a score. Of course, there's a lot of different points of view about what that is. You know, if you speak to somebody who is really, who really values performance practice, then they wouldn't agree with my approach to reading a score. But what I try to do is I try to understand patterns in the music and where they vary, you know. So if a voicing of a chord is suddenly different than it was earlier, I want to notice that, and I want to understand why is it different and how does it make you feel if it's different like that. Or I think that just being really observant and trying to see everything that's there. A lot of students don't actually, they don't look very closely at the music. And I think that you really want to look closely because it's also a little bit like being a detective. And I like that process where you're looking at the music and you're trying to understand it, you know. You're not just guessing, and you're not just saying, I feel like playing it like this today, and so I'm going to play it like this. It's like you have to respond to what is there.